Hey guys. So my last few videos, if you haven't noticed, have been reviewing movies. So I decided this time let's change that up. We're gonna review a TV show instead. So I decided to review The Flash season 6. So if you've been watching The Flash, you know that ever since season 2, it's been going on a bit of a downward trend. But I'm glad to report that season 6 was actually freaking awesome. I actually found myself for the first time in like a few years actually genuinely excited to watch the next episode of the show and not feel like I'm watching it out of obligation for sticking with it for so long. Personally, I think this might have to do with the way that they formatted the season and the showrunner called it two graphic novels, when really, if you're not a comic book fan, it's just two separate stories basically. So the first one is about blood work, and the second one's about Mirror Master. And they're split in the middle by Crisis on Infinite Earths. So the first graphic novel was called Blood and Truth. It's about Barry and the team trying to deal with the future newspaper crisis, because that just got bumped up to December 2019. So they're kind of freaked out because Barry's days are kind of limited at this point. But on top of all of this, they also have this new villain called Bloodwork, whose main motive is to cure death. It's a kind of a whack motive, not gonna lie, but this is a comic book show, so I'm kind of accepting it. So right off the bat, it's already apparent that they've already amended a lot of the last few seasons' mistakes, like especially the tone. Like season 3, it was too dark. Season 4 was too upbeat. Season 5, I don't even know how to describe. It was all over the place. Now this one, it managed to keep a balanced tone more closer to like season 1 and 2. Although 2 ended up getting a bit dark in the last half. I don't know if you noticed. Another thing I really dug was that the villain wasn't stretched out. So like what they did, they split the villains like into 2 parts. I've already explained this, but basically it made it so the main villain of each half didn't feel like it was super stretched out and prolonged, which was freaking awesome because Cicada last year was a complete drag. Another thing I really dug was the new Flash suit, because the new Flash suit was absolutely ballin'. Anyway, this part of the season was a little bit more horror movie-ish, which I'm not a huge horror fan, but like this actually happened to work because the villain was actually really, really good, and probably, in my opinion, probably the best we've had since Zoom, which is, I don't know if I want to say this, but Zoom might be my favorite villain of the show, not gonna lie, Chief. It was also really cool to have like a contrast where like the villain was super afraid of dying and was like, yo, no, I'm not gonna die, Chief. Whereas Barry was just like, yeah, I'm dying in like a month or so. I'm chill about it, you know, I've accepted it. Overall, Blood and Truth was a banging way to open the season. It had a balanced tone, it had a really good villain, and the build up to Crisis was really, really well done. Now, I'm not sure if that will hold up on rewatches, but we'll get to that in a minute. Overall, I would give this this graphic novel a solid 8 out of 10. It was a nice breath of fresh air from the absolute garbage that was season 5. So now on to Crisis on Infinite Earths. Well, here it is, boys. The crisis that we've been building up to since the pilot episode is finally here. And it freaking sucked. Why? Well, I'll get to that. The story was a complete mess, for starters. And it really just felt like the first 2 parts of and I would argue the entire crossover really just felt like it was being built around who they could get to cameo and like how many things that they were allowed to use. And then they were like, okay, we'll get this stuff first, and then we'll make the story. That's not to say I didn't enjoy the crossover at all. I really liked episodes 3 and 4 of the crossover, which actually focused on the characters and the story, which I really was what I wanted out of this crossover. Now we're going to get back to the negatives for a minute here. And above everything else, what I truly hated was how underused the Flash and the Green Arrow were utilized in this crossover. For starters, Oliver literally dies in the very first episode of the crossover. And we barely see him in the rest of it until like episode, I want to say 4, the Arrow part of it. And like, that was like the best one in my opinion. And like he absolutely destroyed the Anti-Monitor. Well, we think he did. We'll get to that too. I will say though, I hated his first death scene. It was kind of, I don't know, it was kind of stilted like that. It just, I don't know, it didn't, it was a very wooden death scene. Like, just the acting wasn't very all there. I don't know. The second death scene, though. The second death scene was beast mode. It really felt like a good way to send off Oliver Queen, the character we've been following for the last 8 years. Now, this isn't a narrow season 8 review though, so we gotta get back to The Flash. So, but now you might ask, were they able to stick the landing with the Flash vanishing in Crisis? No, not at all. They were not. They pulled a fake out on us and they said a Flash dies in Crisis. They didn't say which Flash. So they pulled the John Wesley Shipp version from the 1990s Flash TV show, and they're like, alright, you're the one that's going to die in Crisis. Now, I thought it was a good close for that character, and it was awesome to see that happen and get some closure on the Flash 90s show. But for this show, for the Flash 2014, it was not good. It felt just like a complete waste of build-up. Like, we've been building up to this for 6 seasons now, and nothing, it was just a complete waste. It was terrible. Anyway, like I said, part 4 was pretty dope. We got an awesome Ezra Miller Flash cameo, which was completely unexpected. Like, when I first saw that, I literally jumped out of my chair. I was like, holy crap. I might not be a fan of Ezra Miller's Flash. I think he's a terrible Flash, personally. Like, maybe he'd be a decent Wally West, but as a Barry Allen, no, not at all. But that's another story. And the final battle of part 4 was alright, and that, honestly, part 4 could have been it. That could have been the final part of the crossover, and I would have been 100% satisfied. But they had to do part 5. Now, part 5 felt a lot like an epilogue to everything, which was fine. But they felt the need to bring back Anti-Monitor, which was a, I don't know, it sort of cheapened Oliver's sacrifice in a way. I don't know. So yeah, I was not a fan of Crisis, to say the least. They had some cool fan service and some cool stuff like that, but really what I wanted to see from Crisis was more of the characters, like see Flash and Arrow, because like this is the last time we're going to be seeing Green Arrow and Flash on screen together, more than likely. Maybe Stephen Amell will come back for the Flash finale? Who knows? So I will give this a solid 5 out of 10. Graphic Novel 2 does not have a name, so I am going to call it Mirror Boogaloo. Now, this part of the season focuses more on the fallout from Crisis, which ends up being a lot more entertaining than the actual Crisis. First, we get some dope stuff like all the shows finally being set on one Earth, which makes it a lot more easy for crossovers to happen. And we also get some cool setup for the death of the Speed Force, which plays a part across the whole back half of this season. Anyway, the bad guy for the back half of the season is a rebooted Mirror Master, because the Season 3 Mirror Master was kind of a waste of a character. And it kind of sucked. So, except this time it's a chick called Eva McCulloch instead of Evan McCulloch, which is another Mirror Master. I just bit my tongue out. Now, Eva's been trapped in the mirror world for years. So, like, when Iris goes in there and investigates, like, that whole lab or whatever, Eva's like, yo, I got this. I got this. So she reaches out, pulls Iris into the mirror, and then sends out a mirror version of Iris to go do her bidding. So for a really good chunk of the back half of the season, it honestly really felt kind of aimless, because Team Flash does not know at all that Iris is not Iris for the majority of the back half of the season. Like, I think it's like 2 or 3 episodes before the season ends when they finally figure it out. So it really just felt kind of aimless. So basically this whole back half, for a good chunk of it, is basically them trying to figure out all the Crisis changes and also create a new Speed Force, because the old one, the original Speed Force, died. When Eva actually escapes the mirror world, things actually kind of heat up, because now they know that this is not the real Iris and that there's someone else behind this. So they're like, yo, we're gonna stop Eva, whose whole plan is apparently to just kill her husband because she's mad at him. So, and this is another reason I felt kind of aimless, because we really don't have another motive for Eva. Like, I don't know what her motive is after this. So, like, in a way, that makes me more excited and intrigued for Season 7. Because I want to see what her whole grand scheme of things is. Now, we would have probably gotten that whole motive, but COVID happened and they had to end the season early. So, It feels weird for me to review this season because it's really kind of incomplete. Overall, Mirror Boogaloo was pretty interesting, if kind of aimless. So I'm pretty intrigued to see where they go for season 7, which is something I haven't felt since season 2 with Flashpoint. So overall, I'll give Mirror Boogaloo 7 out of 10. Overall, though, The Flash season 6 was really good, and has finally managed to get the show out of its really, really long slump. Characters all felt like they had something to do, except for maybe every now and then, but like for the majority of it, they felt like they had a purpose in the story. Also, the writers also made the characters have lives outside of the team, which we haven't really gotten since season 2, because every season since then they've just been vibing in Star Labs, basically. Now, this is kind of nitpicky, but I would have liked to have seen Barry being the Flash a bit more this season. But that's mostly just because the suit is so freaking good. One of my main hopes for season 7 though is that we actually get a more Barry-centric story, because I think this season was a step in the right direction, don't get me wrong. The first half was mostly about Barry. But the second half, and I'm not complaining because it was still interesting, but I am going to complain about it because this is The Flash, not Iris and her reporters. The second half of the season felt a lot more about Iris and her team of reporters, which it was interesting, but that's not why I signed up for the show and have been sticking with it for 6 seasons. Season was a solid 8 out of 10. Standout episodes included Last Temptation of Barry Allen Part 1 and Death of the Speed Force. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Don't forget to leave a comment down below recommending some movies and just your thoughts, I guess, on Flash Season 6. I'm taking requests for videos because I have no clue what I'm doing. I'll see you guys next time.